Lecture 1, Part 2. After the fallopian tubes parts, we are going to talk about pelvic spaces. Pelvic spaces. What is the pelvic spaces? Pelvic spaces is potential sites for fluid accumulation. It's formed by the folds of peritoneum. So if I want to talk about pelvic spaces, are potential sites for fluid accumulation. It's formed by the folds of peritoneum. So what is the pelvic spaces? Look here for these drawings. This one is the rectum. This one is the uterus. This one is the urinary bladder. And this one here is the pubic symphysis. Pubic symphysis. Do you remember when we mentioned we have a visceral peritoneum? Visceral peritoneum, it's like a membrane that lining the organs. So I'm gonna use color to draw the folds of peritoneum. Look here, we have like a visceral peritoneum surround the rectum, and another one surround the uterus, and one also around the urinary bladder. So imagine this is the visceral peritoneum. The membrane that surrounds the pelvic organs here. So pelvic spaces, potential sites for fluid accumulation, and formed by folds of peritoneum. Look here, guys, at this folds of peritoneum, this orange orange line. If you see this like peritoneum, it's create a space here between the rectum and between the uterus. Look here, there is a space between the rectum and uterus. And we have another space, this one between the uterus and between the urinary bladder. The space that between the rectum and the uterus is called posterior cul-de-sac. So posterior. So this space is called posterior cul-de-sac. And it has other name. recto-uterine bowage. It makes sense. It's between the rectum and the uterus. That's why it's called recto-uterine bowage. So it has like other name. It's called recto-uterine bowage, or also known as posterior cul-de-sac or bowage of Douglas. So I'm gonna write it down here. Also known as bowage of Douglas. So this is the names of the posterior cul-de-sac. Posterior cul-de-sac, bowage of Douglas, recto-uterine bowage. It's a space between the rectum and uterus. So if I'm asking you, the posterior cul-de-sac, it's interior to which organ and the posterior to which organ? It's interior to the rectum and the posterior to the uterus. This is the posterior cul-de-sac. We have another space called the interior cul-de-sac. Look here, this is the posterior. Do you see this is the spine, rectum, uterus? So this is from posterior to interior. This is spine, rectum, uterus, bladder, and the pubic symphysis. This is the interior abdominal pelvic wall area. So posterior, interior. So this one is called the posterior cul-de-sac, and this one, the space between the uterus and the urinary bladder, is called the interior cul-de-sac. So I'm gonna write down for you the other one, the interior one. So the interior one is called the interior cul-de-sac. Interior cul-de-sac, or also known as visco-uterine bowage. Visco is represent the urinary bladder, uterine, uterus. So it's between the uterus and between the urinary bladder. This is for the pelvic spaces. Again, remember, it's pelvic spaces are potential sites for fluid accumulation. Okay, what do you think? If we have a fluid will be accumulated first in which space? The posterior cul-de-sac or the interior cul-de-sac? Think about it. It will be the posterior cul-de-sac. It will be the posterior one, because this is the dependent part. This is because of the gravity. This one is the most dependent and is the most inferior portion of the peritoneal cavity. This is the most dependent and inferior portion of the peritoneal cavity, the posterior cul-de-sac area. So the fluid will accumulate first in the posterior cul-de-sac. So interior cul-de-sac between the uterus and between urinary bladder, it's the interior to the uterus and it's the posterior to the urinary bladder. If you memorize these drawings, you can answer a lot of questions. Posterior cul-de-sac between which organ? Rectum and uterus. It's the interior to which organ and the posterior to which organ? What about the interior cul-de-sac between which organs? It's the interior to which organ and the posterior to which organ? So this is the pelvic spaces. We have another space. It's not formed by folds of peritoneum. And this one, it's between the urinary bladder and between the pubic symphysis, this area here. We have a space here between the urinary bladder and between the pubic symphysis. Let me write down for you the name and the information that you need to know about this space. This space is called a space of Retzius. space of radius. So this one, guys, it's between urinary bladder and the pubic symphysis. Between the urinary bladder and the pubic symphysis. And this one, it's not a potential fold or a place for fluid collection. But sometimes abscess takes place here. So it's not a site for fluid accumulation, but instead it will be abscess formation or abscess collection occur in the space of radius. Look here, there is no fold of visceral peritoneum here in the interior wall here of the bladder. So it's not created by folds of peritoneum. The space of radius, it's between the urinary bladder and between the pubic symphysis. This is the pelvic spaces. Next, we're gonna have the uterine ligaments. Uterine ligaments. Number one, we're gonna talk about a ligament called the broad ligament. Broad ligament are a double fold of peritoneum that drape over fallopian tubes, uterus, and suspends the ovary posteriorly. They extend from the lateral side sides of the uterus to the side wall of the pelvis. So broad ligaments. So before we talk about broad ligament, what are the function of ligaments? We know that the ligaments hold the organ in place. And also it's a house for blood vessels. So it's hold the organs in place. This is like the functions of the ligament. Functions, it's hold the organs in place, and it's a house of the blood vessels, right? Okay, so now we're gonna talk about the broad ligaments. Broad ligaments, it's a double fold of peritoneum. Peritoneum again, it's a double fold of peritoneum that drape over the fallopian tubes, the uterus, and suspends the ovary posteriorly. So suspend the ovaries is attached only to the ovaries from posterior. So this is like the ovary, and the broad ligament attached to the ovaries posteriorly. It's only attached to the ovaries posteriorly, suspends the ovaries posteriorly. It's not includes the ovary. It includes the fallopian tube. It includes the uterus. It's a drape over the uterus and the fallopian tubes. So like imagine this is like this bottle is the uterus, and the broad ligament it includes the uterus from interior and posterior, and also the fallopian tubes. But for the ovaries, it will be only from posterior aspect. They extend from the lateral sides of the uterus to the side wall of the pelvis. So it gives like lateral support. So this one for the broad ligaments. Let me draw the ligaments for you, the broad ligaments. So this is like the information you want to write down for the broad ligaments. Let me show it to you. Okay. So for broad ligament, you're gonna see the broad ligament. It's a drape over the uterus. It's a drape over the fallopian tubes. And also drape over the uterus, and only attached to the ovaries posteriorly. Like you should like this interior view, you will not be able to see like the broad ligament because it's attached to the ovary from posterior aspect. So this is the broad ligament. Look here, it's extend. Look here how it's extend from the lateral side of the uterus to the side wall of the pelvis. So it gives like lateral support. This is for the broad ligament. Okay. I'm gonna write down more information about that. Look here, guys. The fold of peritoneum, which is the portion of the broad ligament that encloses the fallopian tube, is called mesosalpinx. Mesosalpinx. The portion that encloses the uterus is called mesometrium. And the portion of the broad ligament that attached to the ovaries posteriorly is called meso-ovarian or meso-ovarium. Mesosalpinx, broad ligament, the portion of the broad ligament that includes the fallopian tubes. The portion of the broad ligament that includes the uterus, mesometrium, and that attached to the ovaries posteriorly is called the meso-ovarian. Let me write it down for you. So the upper fold of the broad ligament that includes the fallopian tubes known as mesosalpinx. The fold of the broad ligament that includes the uterus is called mesometrium. Upper fold of the broad ligament that includes the fallopian tube known as mesosalpinx. You know, do you remember when we said the fallopian tubes is also known as salpinx? So salpinx, it's represent the fallopian tubes. Meso represent the broad ligament. The fold of the broad ligament that includes the uterus, mesometrium. Meso, the broad ligament, and the metrium, it's stand for the uterus or represent the uterus. Okay. The posterior portion of the broad ligament that suspends the ovary is called meso-ovarium. Posterior portion of the broad ligament that suspends the ovary, is called meso-ovarium. And then write down broad ligament contains the following structures. Fallopian tubes, ovarian arteries, uterine arteries, suspensory ligament, and ovarian ligament. We're gonna go over these, the round ligament, the suspensory, and the ovarian ligaments. But like again, if you remember, we mentioned ligaments are a house for vessels and the nerves. So you're gonna see again between the two fold of peritoneum, which is the broad ligament. Remember, we mentioned the broad ligament is a double fold of peritoneum. Double fold of peritoneum, and between this double fold of peritoneum, we're gonna see all these structures. I'm gonna show it to you in image to make it easy for you to understand how this double fold of peritoneum, the broad ligament, all this structure between these folds of peritoneum. This is for the broad ligament. Next, it will be the round ligament. Round ligament. Round ligaments are fibrous cords attach the uterine cornua to the anterior pelvic wall. Look here, guys. Round ligament. Where is the round ligament? This is the round ligament. Round ligament. Round ligament, look here, and anchor the uterus or attach the uterus at the level of the cornua to the anterior pelvic wall. So this one give like interior support. This is the one that keep the uterus in a forward position for the round ligament, because it's give like, again, it's anchor the cornua to the interior pelvic wall. This one that keep the forward position of the uterus, the round ligament. So if you remember, again, we have the broad ligament, and this one, it's from the lateral side of the uterus to the side wall of the pelvis. And then we have there, so from the sides of the uterus to the side wall of the pelvis, it gives like a lateral support. Round ligament, it will be here at the level of the cornua, so it to the interior pelvic wall. Are fibrous cords attach the uterine cornua to the interior pelvic wall. Next, we're gonna have more two ligaments. They anchor the uterus at the level of the cervix. Do you remember we mentioned the cervix is firmly supported and fixed in position, right? Why? Because it's supported by two ligaments. Okay, what are the two ligaments that located at the level of the cervix? We have two ligaments at the level of the cervix here. We have one And we have another one this way. Two ligaments, look here, they are at the level of the cervix. They hold the cervix in place. One is called the cardinal. This one is called cardinal. And this one is called uterosacral. Look here, guys. This cardinal, it's give like the cervix lateral support. So it's from the cervix to the side wall of the pelvis. Uterosacral, from its name, sacral. So it's anchor the uterus to the sacrum. Sacrum give posterior support. So cardinal, it's also known as lateral cervical, again because it gives like lateral support. So it's this one, it's connects uterus at the level of the cervix to the lateral pelvic wall. I can say those the side wall of the pelvis, it's correct too. This is for the cardinal or the lateral cervical. This one, it gives like lateral support. Connect the uterus at the level of the cervix to the side wall of the pelvis. Okay, next it will be the uterosacral. Uterosacral, this one, it's anchor the uterine cervix to sacrum. That's why it's called uterosacral. It's a posterior support. Anchor the cervix to the sacrum posteriorly. So this one, it's a provide posterior support. So again, for uterine ligaments, we have the broad ligament. The broad ligament that includes the uterus and the fallopian tube and suspend the ovaries posteriorly. We have the round ligament that anchors the uterus at the level of the cornua to the interior pelvic wall. We have the cardinal and uterosacral. Cardinal, lateral support, and uterosacral, posterior support. This one for the ligaments. Imagine, guys, imagine we have loose ligament and the muscles of the uterus are weak. So what do you expect to happen? We have a pathology called uterine prolapse. I'm gonna write it down for you. And I'm gonna show it to you. I'm gonna show you pictures about this one. It's a uterine prolapse. And this one, you're gonna see it's abnormal rubbing of the uterus and occurs if the uterine ligaments, ligaments and pelvic floor muscles are weak, allowing the uterus to protrude into the vagina. When we mention functions of uterine ligaments, it's a support and hold the organs in place. Just if we have like, think about if we have like loose ligament and the ligaments and the pelvic floor muscles, we are going to talk about this one in lecture one. The pelvic floor muscles are weak. This one allowing the uterus to protrude into the vagina. And I'm gonna show you how it looks like. This is for the uterine ligaments. Pelvic spaces or adjacent spaces. We mentioned we have three pelvic spaces. We have the anterior cul-de-sac or viscouterine pouch, reflection of peritoneum over anterior surface of uterus and the bladder, posterior cul-de-sac, rectouterine pouch or pouch of Douglas. It's reflection of peritoneum over posterior surface of uterus and rectum. And I add you the other one, which is the space of Retzius between the urinary bladder and between the pubic symphysis. Next, you're gonna have the ligaments. We have the cardinal, we have the uterosacral, we have the round ligament and the broad ligament. Cardinal anchor the uterine corpus and the cervix to the lateral pelvic wall. Uterosacral anchor the uterine cervix to the sacrum. Round ligaments anchor the uterine fundus interiorly, and the broad ligament, part of the peritoneum that divides the uterus and divides the true pelvis into interior and the posterior portion, because it's includes the whole uterus from interior and the posterior. It divides the true pelvis into interior and the posterior. This is for the ligaments. You're gonna have the broad ligament. You have like the uterosacral, and it should be one here. It should be the round ligament. It's not all the ligaments seen in this one. Let me try to show it to you. So guys, look here at this one. Uh, it will show you like this is a broad ligament. Did you see this wings? Again, it's like double fold of peritoneum. It includes the cervix, it includes the fallopian tube, and suspend the ovaries or attached to the ovary posteriorly. Look here how it's between these folds of peritoneum. We have the ligaments. We have you see this one also, and between them the ureters. Look here, this is the left ureter and the right ureter between the double fold of peritoneum. We have also the ovarian ligament. We are going to talk about this one. You're gonna see also, look here for the uterosacral ligament. It's between the two folds of peritoneum, and also the blood vessels. You're gonna see it's between these double fold of peritoneum, or between the broad ligament. We have the blood vessels, nerves, and the structures that I write it down for you in the board. Um, Let me show you like the round ligaments. Okay, let's see this one here. So again, you see this is the uterus, and this one is part of the broad ligament. You see the wings. You see how it's a part of the broad ligament. It's interior and the posterior. It doesn't show you here that the uterus from interior, it's encloses by the broad ligament. You see the round ligament. The round ligament, it's attached or anchor the uterus at the level of the cornua to the interior pelvic wall. This is the round ligament at the level of the cornua to the interior pelvic wall. Okay, let me show you the uterine prolapse. So when we have like loose ligaments, uterine prolapse, how it looks like. Okay, guys, look here at this one. Do you see how is the uterus is outside, out of the vagina? It's protrude into the vagina and coming outside of the vagina. See how it's the uterus is out because of the loose ligament and the weak muscles. Look at this one here. Do you remember when I drew for you the cervix and cross-sectional? See how this is the cervix area is out of the vagina, because this is called uterine prolapse, pelvic organ prolapse. Let me try to see if we have another images. Look here at this one. The cervix area, the whole uterus is out of the vagina. Is one of the common clinical conditions met in day-to-day the GYN practice. It's most often seen in a multiparous woman. Multiparous, again, it's parity means how many times she gave birth. So multiparous, she have more than one kid. And it's a form of herniation. The uterus again prolapse out of the vagina because of the muscles are weak. We know like the woman with the multiparous woman, the woman she has like more than one kid, maybe the muscles are very weak, and maybe the ligament will be too loose and leads to uterine prolapse. This is for the uterine prolapse. Okay, let's go back to the slides. We talk about the ligaments. Next, it will be the pelvic bones. Pelvic girdle, we have four bones, sacrum and the coccyx, and we know the sacrum and the coccyx, it's posterior, right? Sacrum and the coccyx. So this one, it's forming the posterior wall of the pelvis, and we have two innominate bones, which is like these two wings, like these hip bones. It's made up of a fusion of ilium, ischium, and pubis. Two innominate bones is made up of ilium, ischium, and the pubic. You see these two pubic bones, one here and one there, and between them there is a cartilage called the pubic symphysis. And we are placing the transducer on the pubic symphysis area when we perform the trans-abdominal pelvic exam. You place the transducer on the pubic symphysis. So this is for the four bones. Please write down that the sacrum and the coccyx form the posterior wall of the pelvis. And the two innominate is also known as coxal bones. And they are coxal bones, C-O-X-A-L, coxal bones. Again, this one, they form the interior and lateral wall of the pelvis. Okay. This is for the pelvic bones, and next it will be division of the true and the false pelvis. Let me show you this one. I'm gonna write like more details about this one. So I remember we mentioned about the pelvic bones. We have the sacrum, we have the coccyx, we have the two innominate. The two innominate is also known as coxal bones. Coxal bones or the two innominate, they form the interior and lateral of the pelvis. Then we have like the sacrum and the coccyx. Remember sacrum. And so we have two coxal, we have one sacrum and one coccyx. And these like two forms the posterior of the pelvis. This is for the pelvic bones. We have one sacrum, one coccyx, and the two coxal or two innominate bones. So they form the inferior and the lateral wall of the pelvis, and the sacrum and the coccyx form the posterior wall of the pelvis. Next, it will be the division of the pelvis. Division of the pelvis. The pelvis is divided into the pelvis is divided into true pelvis and false pelvis by an imaginary line called linea terminalis or iliopectineal line. So again, guys, the pelvis is divided into two compartments, into two portions. One is called the true pelvis and the other one is called the false pelvis by an imaginary line called the linea terminalis or iliopectineal line. Let me explain to you what this imaginary line. Okay, let me draw for you. Okay, guys, please pay attention. So this one, it is a sacrum and this is a coccyx, right? And this one, it should be like posterior view. This one, it's like posterior. Sacrum and the coccyx is posterior. And then we have like the ilium, right? This is the ilium. And this is like the ischium. The ischium is the bone, is the bones that we sit on. And then we have like the pubic bones. Look here, one pubic and one pubic. This one here. This one is the pubic bones. And the pubic bones, it's like merged together by the cartilage, and this cartilage is the pubic symphysis. Okay. Now, the pelvis is divided into two: true pelvis and false pelvis. by an imaginary line. The imaginary line, it's extend from, look here, extend from the superior margin, of the sacrum to the superior margin of the pubic symphysis. Look here, this apple shape. This is the line. Let me again. It's from the superior margin of the sacrum to the superior margin of the pubic symphysis. So whatever is below this line is the true pelvis. This area is the true pelvis. And whatever is above this line, it will be the false pelvis. Again, let me write it down for you. What is the imaginary line extended from? So, iliopectineal line, the linea terminalis, extend from the superior margin of the sacrum, extends from the superior margin of sacrum to the superior margin of the pubic symphysis. So again, look here, from here to there. Do you see like this apple shape? This is the iliopectineal line. This is the imaginary line. Whatever is below the linea terminalis, it will be the true pelvis. And whatever is above this line, this is the false pelvis. This is the true pelvis. True pelvis is the smaller one, is the lesser one. And the true pelvis contains this one important, the female reproductive organs. The female reproductive organs, it's within the true pelvis. So you're gonna see the bladder, the uterus, the vagina, all in this apple shape. And the false pelvis, you see this like hip bones or this wings, the ilium and this area here. This is the false pelvis. It's a bigger, it's a major. But the small one, it's the true pelvis, and the true pelvis is the contains the female reproductive organs. Let's go over this information in your slides again. I'm gonna go back on a slide. So we mentioned the pelvic bones, division of the true and the false pelvis. Look here, this is like a side view. It's showing you like this is the superior margin of the sacrum. It's called also sacral promontory. And this one is the pubic symphysis from superior margin of the sacrum to the superior margin of the pubic symphysis, or the symphysis pubis, pubic symphysis or symphysis pubis. Whatever is below this line, it will be the true pelvis. All the female reproductive organs, it will be within the true pelvis. Whatever is above this line, it will be the false pelvis. And this line is called the linea terminalis or iliopectineal line. The term that is written here in your slide, the conjugate vera, this one is a measurement. It's not other name of linea terminalis. It's a measurement. It's this measurement we gonna measure between the sacral promontory, which is the superior margin of the sacrum, to the superior margin of the pubic symphysis. This is for the conjugate vera. They take this measurement during like the birth or at time of delivery to see like the birth canal. So this is conjugate vera. But like again, the important names you have to know about the imaginary line, linea terminalis or iliopectineal line. Okay, so I'm gonna stop here and I'm gonna record for you the rest of the lecture tomorrow. So please like study, again, write the additional notes. If you have any question, send me a text message or send me an email. Have a good one, guys, and be safe. Thank you.